Chapter 20, Casa Adobes Safeway, Tucson, Arizona, January 8th, 2011. Alejandro Lopez Chuy Hernandez was born in Tucson, grew up in Tucson, went to school in Tucson, and got jobs in Tucson. He loved his hometown. He loved it when it was 70 degrees, and he loved it when it felt like 170 degrees. He loved the fact that his parents, Miguel Angel and Valentina, were also born and raised in Tucson. That's not to say he wasn't equally, if not maybe a little more, proud of his two sets of grandparents, all of them born and raised in Mexico, who fell in love and got married in Mexico. Then, when they realized they were to have children, understood that the future of their unborn lay not on their native soil, but with their neighbor to the north. Both sets of grandparents came to the United States legally. All four ultimately became citizens. No one was here illegally in this family. In fact, from as early as he could remember, Chuy, his father had called him that as a baby, feeling he was a blessing from God, would be brought to various Democratic campaign headquarters so he could be babysat by staffers, while first his grandparents, who had babysitting duties, but were shirking them. Then his parents were out knocking on Hispanic doors, campaigning for various candidates. It was a family not only of Democrats, but of restaurateurs. Tucson, Arizona had a growing reputation throughout the United States for some of the best Mexican food in the country. One of the reasons was Hermosillo Nogales, the restaurant Chuy's two grandfathers had opened in Tucson back in 1937. They had met literally in line, waiting for physical entry into the United States. His paternal grandfather, Jorge Hernandez, was from Hermosillo. His maternal grandfather, Diego Lopez, was from Nogales. Both had backgrounds cooking. Both loved the restaurant industry. Both had pregnant wives who give birth in early 1938. One was Miguel Angel, the other was Valentina. Chuy's parents would grow up together, play together, go to school together, including graduating together from the University of Arizona in Business Administration, the only members of either family to get through college, much less high school. Along the way, they fell in love, were married in September 1959, with Chuy arriving September 20th, 1960. Hermosillo Nogales was a thriving success for the first 30 years of its existence, providing an extremely comfortable income for both families, including Chuy's family. Both Miguel Angel and Valentina had majored in business to help run the restaurant, using more modern, up-to-date business practices. Their fathers, however, were decidedly not modern, up-to-date owners. If their business philosophy could be summed up in 3 words, those words would be, change is bad. No change in menu, no change in decor, no change in signage, no change in kitchen equipment, unless it was to replace some broken old-fashioned machinery with similar old-fashioned machinery another restaurant was getting rid of. Advertising was always minimal. Word of mouth is what the owners believed in. Neighbors would tell neighbors. Friends would tell friends. However, as Tucson became the second largest city in Arizona and one of the largest cities in the southwestern United States, massive competition started to intrude on once was Hermosillo Nogales' nearly exclusive territory. By 1968, the 31st year of its existence, Hermosillo Nogales was competing with not only newer, fancier Mexican restaurants, but also restaurants who specialized in only 1 or 2 areas of Mexican cuisine. Taco stands featuring fresh fish and burrito stands featuring chimichangas were just a few of the examples popping up all over Tucson and the suburbs. At a family gathering on Christmas Day 1973 with 13-year-old Chuy listening intently, everyone decided it was time to close Hermosillo Nogales. Both sets of grandparents were retirement age. They had done well, even with increased losses the last 5 years. Miguel Angel and Valentina had thought for a moment about buying their folks out. However, they realized that they had no business running a restaurant. They certainly knew the financial side of it, and had saved each of their dads thousands of dollars through their instituted financial controls on the restaurant the last few years. It was the food they had no idea about. Neither of them could cook. Neither of them wanted to learn. Chuy was devastated. He knew how to cook. Since the age of 7 or 8, he'd been hanging around the kitchen, watching his El Balbutos grandfathers prepare not only the standard Mexican fare of tacos, enchiladas, burritos, chimichangas, fajitas, and the like, but also dishes from their hometowns. Mochomos, which is fresh shredded beef from Nogales, close to a beef burrito from Hermosillo. He watched. He asked lots of questions. Once Jorge said to Diego, "What a pain in the ass. He comes from your side of the family." All in Spanish. And he was learning. So much so that when there was a rush, which happened infrequently in the last few years, Jorge and Diego would put little Chuy to work making the standards while they concentrated on the higher quality dishes. He loved it. He argued with his parents for weeks about their decision. He knew what he now wanted to do with his life: reopen Hermosillo Nogales. He also knew that he'd been in a restaurant that at that point had seen better days, that he'd have to get experience in other locations. Fortunately, the Mexican cuisine explosion was hitting Tucson, so Chuy had lots of opportunities. Starting at the age of 14, he was working in restaurants throughout the city. First as a busboy dishwasher, then as a prep cook, then line cook. He would also wait tables and host, depending on what the restaurant needed. Chuy was soaking up information. What worked? What didn't work? What menu item could be appropriate for his future menu? What was the most efficient way for a Mexican kitchen to operate? When he graduated with decent grades from Tucson High Magnet School in May 1979, his parents knew it was useless to try to talk Chuy to college. They knew, and he knew, what he wanted. Fortunately, both parents were doing well. Miguel Angel was in the business office of Don Diamond, a land developer who was then in the process of buying and building on thousands of acres of land in and around Tucson. Valentina worked as an analyst with the Pima County government. They were living in the Sam Hughes area of Tucson, which was an extremely diverse yet beautiful area of town with access to parks, shops, and restaurants. There were many times during the early part of his career that Chuy could walk to work from home. At the age of 25, Chuy thought he was ready to start his own business. However, Tucson lending establishments didn't take well to a high school graduate with limited income and little established credit venturing out into the Mexican restaurant field, especially when that field was getting more crowded by the day. No one was interested in the 18 letters of recommendation he had from former employers. They were interested in how they were going to make their money back selling the used restaurant equipment that would be left after Chuy's failed venture. His other challenge was his parents. They would not co-sign for anything. Not a light bulb, not a tortilla maker, nothing. They remembered how much work, literally hundreds of hours, they had to put in to ensure their parents could sell Hermosillo Nogales without losing what remained of their shirts, then enjoying their retirement. They were not going to have to go through that again for anybody, family or not. So Chuy kept working. He was a line cook, then sous chef, then head chef at several upper-scale Mexican restaurants. Then spent time in the front of the house, assistant manager, shift manager, general manager, always making sure he kept his hand in the back of the house, working several shifts a week cooking. He would normally spend a year or two at a location, learn as much as he could, then move on. World travels fast in the Tucson restaurant community, so they knew Chuy never overstayed his welcome. They also knew he was a very hard worker, extremely well-versed in all things Mexican cuisine, and would be worth every penny paid him. When he left the place, there was always another restaurant ready to bring him on, knowing they'd only have him for a finite time. Chuy was offered several opportunities at partnerships, percentages of the net in return for his cooking, management, overall restaurant expertise. He always turned the offers down. When the time and the opportunity was right, Chuy would be owner, operator, head chef, even chief bottle washer if he wanted to do that. He would call the shots. He would decide on the cuisine. While Chuy was gaining experience, he was losing his mentors. Grandpa Jorge Hernandez died in 1987 at the age of 80. Grandpa Diego Lopez passed away in 1989, age 86. Chuy had continued learning from them, even when all the cooking they did was an occasional frittata in their own kitchens. He would give them scenarios, ask them questions, or would simply listen while they reminisced about Hermosillo, Nogales in its heyday, always realizing that they came from another era, yet remembering what they did was exactly what he wanted to do: serve excellent Mexican food to people so excellent that they'll want to come back again and again. That simple mission statement would be just as true whenever Chuy opened Hermosillo, Nogales as it was in 1937 when his grandfather's first opened its doors. It wasn't until 2000, the 40th year of Chuy's existence and the 26th year of Hermosillo, Nogales closing, that the dream became reality. Well, sort of. It wasn't doors open signaling a brand new Hermosillo, Nogales. It was more like order windows opening after it rolled to a stop and brakes were applied. In late 1999, Chuy bought a used mobile food truck from a buddy of his in Phoenix. It was one of those trucks one saw at a construction site or a factory. A common term for them had been roach coaches or gut trucks. This one was a little bigger. Chuy's buddy had assured him he'd help Chuy with all the modifications necessary and was true to his word. On Monday, January 3rd, 2000, Hermosillo Nogales Camion, which meant truck, started rolling through the streets of Tucson. Alejandro Lopez Chuy Hernandez, proprietor and driver and chef and prep cook and chief everything washer. It was the happiest day of Chuy's life. He was immediately successful. He understood that anyone ordering food from a truck needed to eat it by hand, so he had a menu full of portable items. Tacos, enchiladas, burritos, sopapillas, all were included in his initial menu. He made sure that all his ingredients were fresh, that he made all his tortillas from scratch, and that his prices were reasonable. He also took advantage of the huge network he developed throughout the years. There were many weeks that he had reserved parking spaces throughout the week, courtesy of former co-workers and employees who had moved on to other companies, other fields. Among his network were people who understood far better than him the power of the internet and how using it to make sure potential customers knew his location that day, even that hour, would put him ahead of the growing food competition. Hermosillo Nogales Camion turned into Camion 2 in late 2000, Camion 3 in early 2002, and Camion 4 in early 2003. With the addition of more trucks came the need for employees. Fortunately, that extensive network again came into play, supplying Chuy with those former fellow workers and employers that knew Chuy and his easygoing, authoritarian delegation style of management. If you showed him you could do the job, he'd let you and would reward you handsomely. Just don't take advantage of that easygoing nature or think you could somehow steal from him. If you did either, not only would you be gone, there'd also be a whole lot of businesses who'd be closing their doors to you as well. Chuy would rotate among the trucks, training, mentoring, product regulation. As more trucks entered the Tucson business district, a more varied menu was developed, including box meals to take back to an office or home, including dishes formerly on the original Hermosillo Nogales restaurant menu. It was the addition of these dishes that brought the memories back and nudged Chuy back to his original goal of opening a brick-and-mortar Hermosillo Nogales. 2005 began with Chuy looking at locations throughout the city and suburbs and not finding what he was looking for. His parents, both retired at age 77 but still regularly active in volunteering in Democratic politics, kept asking their son what he was looking for. "I don't know. I'll know when I see it," was his customary reply. He knew places he didn't want to be. Top of the list was the El Presidio area. That was El Charro Cafe territory. El Charro was the oldest Mexican restaurant in the United States, still owned by one family. Established in 1922, it was the place tourists went first. He thought about, then discounted the University of Arizona area. College kids want what's on our trucks, not what's in a brick and mortar place. During 2005, he added Kemyon 5, but kept searching for the best location he could find, growing more and more discouraged as time went on. Sunday, January 6, 2006, found him in Sedona, Arizona. He was dating someone then and went up for one of the less raucous New Year's Eves of his life, surrounded by what his late grandfather Jorge would have called tree-hugging hippies. Just before midnight, his date gave him some magic mushrooms, which he very grudgingly took. Her house was located just outside Sedona in what was then called the Chapel area, with views of the amazing red rocks. As Chuy stumbled out of the house and into her backyard, throwing himself onto a lawn chair, he looked up and saw the red rocks, lit up, snow-capped, looking and feeling to him like a living, breathing person. He could see the breaths the rocks were taking in the chilly night air, how this giant structure was looking like a chest would, moving in and out with air. Suddenly, he felt he was not alone. He looked to his left, Grandpa Jorge. To his right was Grandpa Diego. He tried to jump up horrified. He felt Jorge touch his arm. In Spanish, "Don't worry, Chuy. It's the fucking mushrooms." Chuy felt himself sinking back into his chair. Diego snorted. In Spanish, "Fucking tree-hugging hippies." Chuy said to both grandfathers, "Why are you here? What are you doing in Sedona?" Jorge, "Well, first, we're not here. We're just in your thick, stupid fucking head. Right, Diego?" "See, Jorge, just two ghosts here to talk some sense into you." "But you're my mentors, my mentoras. Everything I've done has been to honor your both and your vision." Jorge, "You have, and you continue to. You've got 5 rolling restaurants covering the city. The turistas, the locals, they go to them. Why the fuck, if you've got a way to go to the whole city and give them good food and take their money, which you use to visit this puta hippie." "Not grandfather. Sorry, Chuy. Stupid puta hippie gives you hongos," mushrooms. Diego, "No, Jorge. Without the hippie and her hongos, we couldn't come here and talk some sense into the boy." "You're right, my brother Diego. Chuy, we love you more than you'll ever know. You have honored us in so many ways, from the names of your trucks to the food you serve to the way you treat your employees like familia. You don't need a restaurant. You have 5 of them. They just have wheels on them. Don't put walls up around you and your dream. Continue with the path you're going. Mijo, my boy." A word from Diego. "This I promise. There will come a day, Chuy, when you'll be glad you did not have to worry about a building and equipment." Jorge, "No, Diego. No more." Okay, one last thing, Chuy. Enjoy this. Enjoy every day. Enjoy the hard work as well as the time and money you earn from it. Know that Jorge and I are honored by you, are proud of you, love you very much, and will watch over you always. Chuy felt the tears run down his face, felt both their hands on his shoulders, felt kisses on his cheeks. He opened his eyes. The sun was out. It was almost 10 a.m., and the red rocks were no longer breathing. It was time to go home. Chuy added Campion 6 later that year, and other than to replace the older trucks with new ones or repair and add new equipment to his newer ones, 6 trucks would be the maximum he would ever have. 6 felt comfortable to him, especially when his close to 50-employee company was well-trained and working on all cylinders. Starting in early 2008, he instituted a profit-sharing plan, where the employees working on a particular truck would also receive a percentage of the net profits from that truck at the end of the year. In 2009, he began his Buy a Truck with Sweat Equity program. As he was replacing his older trucks, he decided instead of trading them in, that he'd make them available to the employees who had worked on each truck. For $5,000 down and $1,000 a month for 18 months, an older truck could be purchased. Considering used food trucks were selling for between $30,000 and $45,000, this was an amazing offer. Chuy would lose well-trained, valuable employees, but he also received invaluable positive word of mouth throughout the restaurant and expanding food truck network. ensuring he'd receive high-quality applicants for his brand new truck, with the possibility of those applicants being able to buy the truck for half to one-third of the price. Chuy would always keep his hand in as far as the actual business was concerned, which meant driving the truck, cooking the food, talking to customers, and always training, teaching, motivating. He would normally do most of his driving for his parents and their various causes, always donating a portion of his proceeds to whatever event they requested his presence at. Whether it was for a charity run, an outdoor concert, or political speeches, always by Democrats, Chuy in one of his trucks would be there, feeding the masses, as he liked to say. In 2009, he lost his mom, Valentina, to kidney failure at age 82. However, that did not curtail his working at nonprofit events. His dad, Miguel Angel, threw himself into filling those lonely hours without el amor de mi vida, the love of my life, into hours spent trying to make the world a better place. It was just such an event that brought Chuy and Hermosillo Nogales Campion 4 to the Los Tana Village Shopping Center, located at the corner of North Oracle Road and West Ena Road, early in the morning of Saturday, January 8, 2011. Congresswoman Gabrielle, Gabby Giffords, was holding her first Congress on Your Corner event since being re-elected back in November 2010, and Miguel Angel volunteered his son to help provide food and beverages out in the parking lot. Occasionally, some restaurants, especially mom-and-pop operations in strip malls, would complain about a food truck being on the premises. So Chuy, as he did this morning, went to Lascana Village early, found out what sort of breakfast the brick and mortar served, then promised not to sell anything close to what they were cooking, which basically left him with very few limitations. It had been an okay morning as far as sales were concerned, but Chuy never really went to these events to make money. It always seemed he either barely broke even or even lost a few dollars. He did it so he could hang with his dad, watch him organize, making sure the table was placed in the right location just outside the Safeway, and that any potentially relevant paperwork, voter registration, immigration information, only a reach away. Watch his father chatting with both friends and strangers, inviting one and all to come meet their representative. Watch his father get greeted by Representative Giffords at 10 a.m. like the old friend he was. Watch him organize a line for those that wish to speak directly with Representative Giffords, about 20 people, then stepping quietly into the crowd to the left, the Walgreens side of the parking lot, not looking for any attention, other than the 2 thumbs up he received from his son in Camion 6, parked in the first spaces in the parking area to the right of the Safeway. Chuy turned from the window to clean the grill when he heard it. Pop! Then a scream. Turning quickly, he heard more pops, then saw a guy wearing gray with a stocking-leg cap, gun in hand, next to Representative Giffords' table, firing wildly into the crowd. He couldn't see his dad. Instantly, he bolted out of the truck, running as fast as his 315-pound, 6-foot body could propel him. The guy had stopped shooting, was attempting to reload, but dropped the magazine, grabbing another who was trying to reload when Chuy, along with 2 others, flattened him on the sidewalk. Chuy immediately jumped up, quickly scanning the carnage in front of him, not seeing the dead or wounded, not seeing Representative Giffords, shot above her left eye, a staffer pushing on the wound with his bare hand to staunch the bleeding, looking for one face. Then he spotted him, lying flat on his back, legs spread out awkwardly in front of him, blood seeping through his thin jacket covering his lower part of the body. "Oh God, Dad!" Rushing over to him, ripping off his apron, doing his best to staunch the blood, thanking God he could hear what sounded like dozens of sirens headed their way. "Chuy, I can't feel my legs." "Hang in, Dad, help's coming." In a weaker voice, still repeating, "Chuy, I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs." Miguel Angel was transported to University Medical Center in Tucson, where he underwent several surgeries. Chuy was in the hospital room when his treating physicians gave both men the news that would forever change their lives. Miguel Angel would never again regain the use of his legs. As the only immediate family member, Chuy took it upon himself to be my dad's wheels, as he put it. He renovated his house, including kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom, as well as his personal car. He reworked his business schedule to spend more time with his father. He placed all other personal relationships off to the side, including someone he'd been dating for close to 2 years. From January 8, 2011 until Miguel Angel passed on one of the hottest days, 116 degrees, ever recorded in Tucson history, June 20th, 2017, Chuy was his everything. His method of transportation, his wheelchair attendant, his chef, his cleaner, his confidant, his most specifically and especially his cheerleader. Basically, Chuy was his dad's home care professional. What he didn't know how to do, he learned. No job was too difficult or uncomfortable or disgusting. His employees, his contacts in the business world, fellow restaurateurs and food truck owners all asked the same question. Why? He could afford home care assistance. His father was entitled to it through Medicare. Even the Arizona Democratic Party was willing to help with the expenses. Why? Why would Chuy not take advantage of the assistance being offered to him? His answer? Because it's my dad. That was his answer to the world at large. The truth was more difficult to explain. When his mother had been brought to University Medical Center in her final days, Chuy had met his father there. As Miguel Angel spoke briefly with the doctor and nurse outside the room, hearing for the first time that this episode would be fatal, Chuy had held her limp right hand. On an impulse, he leaned in and whispered, "Mom, don't worry. I'll take care of Dad. I promise." At that moment, he felt her hand tighten around his, then saw her smile. After a few moments, she slowly relaxed her grip and died. When his father was in the very same hospital his mother had been, he felt her presence all around him, reminding him of his promise. She was not there to care for amor de mi vida, but her son was, and he would not let her down. The more time he spent with his father, the less time he spent with his business. Of all the innovations he'd introduced within the food truck industry, he had not remembered one cardinal rule of any business. Have someone ready to take over in case something happens to you. Chuy had no one, and Chuy paid a heavy price. Employees cut corners rather than follow company procedures. The food quality slipped. Slowly but surely, sales then began to slide. Customer service was not as sharp. The trucks themselves were dirty, both inside and out. They got forcibly sidelined, shut down by health inspectors for several weeks at a time. Chuy tried to dig the company out of the hole his employees had dug, but he couldn't be in 6 trucks at once. As soon as one truck was clean, passed inspection, and was headed back out to the street, another one would be ordered off the road. And unfortunately, for the first time since he bought his first truck, Chuy Hernandez had lost the fire in his belly. The pride that he'd felt about the company he created was gone, replaced by the feeling of dread, a feeling, I gotta deal with another health inspector about one more fuck up while I need to be caring for Dad. He didn't want to be bothered with it anymore. Ultimately, he got his wish. By the time his father passed, all trucks had been sold. The company had been dissolved, with Chuy living off the profits from successful early years. Dwindling profits. Plus some money from asset sales. Plus a small inheritance from his dad. But not much. He just didn't care. He'd become an assaulted member along with his dad shortly after Chuy had gotten him home from the hospital. 2 envelopes, both oversized, both with the Columbine, Colorado postmark, both different in handwritten content due to the 2 of them suffering different wounds, but both joining the site. Miguel Angel as Tucson 39, Chuy Tucson 40. They were stunned to learn that the guy had been firing a Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol with a 33-round magazine. 33 rounds. Both men were stunned into silence when they saw that. What do you do with a 33-round semi-automatic weapon? They both asked each other. How could this be legal? In mid-2015, they both received Navy Yard 14 as their mentor. She helped Chuy through some of the challenges he was having both personally and professionally. As far as Miguel Angel was concerned, Navy Yard 14 was mi hajal Costa Este, my East Coast angel. When his dad passed, Chuy and Maxine spent most of that night together on the phone, off and on, both in tears. As time went on, Maxine had discussed the plan with Chuy, but wasn't sure if he was mentally there or not. Ray was to meet him Monday, July 9th at 10 a.m., Tucson International Airport at Brugger's Bagels. They'd find a seat from there. Ray took American Airlines flight 1039 at 7:10 a.m., Max and her early flights, landing in Tucson at 9:34 a.m. On walking up to Brugger's Bagels, he saw a guy, Hispanic, about 6 feet, big guy, like 325, 350 pounds. A big boy, Ray would later relate to Maxine. Hi, I'm Ray Wilson. Got a coffee? Want something to eat? Chuy laughed. Do I look like I want something to eat? Of course! Chuckles from both. Ray and Chuy got coffee and bagel sandwiches and settled into a vacant area. How much has Navy Yard 14 told you? Not much, a little. Told her I was interested. So, Ray covered the plan. Chuy, well, that's quite a plan. It's not for everyone, Chuy, I get that. It really is for those among us who I call damaged goods. Folks that want to do something to change things. Folks that maybe just don't want to be here anymore, but want to make some kind of difference before they go. Folks that want to avenge someone, maybe even themselves. Folks that are angry about what happened to someone and want to take it out on the most powerful gun lobby in the country, the NRA. At that, Ray stopped and looked at Chuy, staring at Ray, but not staring at him. Tears running down his face, looking at Ray, but past Ray, looking at a moment in time when he saw his father lying on the cement, blood covering him. Chuy, I can't feel my legs. Ray, I'm in. Ray, startled. Chuy, are you sure? I'm really sure. Yeah, Ray, I'm sure. When you were talking, I saw my dad on the ground in that parking lot. 6 people died there, you know. A 9-year-old kid died there. A federal judge, a congresswoman was shot above her left eye. Thank God she survived. But all I thought about at that moment was, my dad's been shot. What do I do? I don't want him to die, and then he doesn't. Not there. But every day after that, he dies just a little bit. When he can't go to the store without me. When he can't bathe without me. When he can't take a shit without me. When he would stare out my window for hours at a time. Just slowly dying. He and I joined the site together. We'd go to what we called our page at least once a week. But it was the very first time we got on together and read that the weapon that caused all that damage first was semi-automatic, that you pull the fucking trigger and another bullet just pops right into place as easy as you please. Then we read he had a 33 cartridge magazine. How in the holy hell are you allowed to sell a 33 cartridge magazine? Who would sell a 33 cartridge magazine to anybody? Same type of people that would sell an automatic rifle to someone so they could kill my wife. Ray called Maxine from the Tucson airport. He's in. He's a good guy. His father really liked me. Yeah, he told me all about that. Angel de la Costa Este. Chuckles. Want to stay out west for a couple of days? Sure, what do you got? Rancho Tahana, 11. Rancho Tahana, California.